Hey, this is Endrick. Today's audio commentary is going to be a different format than normal. This isn't actually going to be a game, this is going to be a Starcraft 2 basic tips audio. Kind of a walkthrough of the basic things that a lot of people have been requesting that I go over, like hotkeys and micro and macro. The little foundations of gameplay that you need to have before you put them all together and become a good player. So what I'm going to go over first is hotkeys. And these can obviously change based on your own personal preferences and your strategy and what works for you, but I'm going to show you how I do my hotkeys as an example of something that can work. So I set all of my basic attack units to 1, my main force, and then I set special units to groups 2 and 3, so like Reapers or Ghosts or whatever. You know, harassing units like Reapers and Banshees are good to hotkey on their own keys so that you can control them separately, of course, and Ghosts are nice so that you can quickly get the EMP. Even, and you know, so that you can move them around within your group of units and get them where you need them to. So, one thing that probably most people already know, but I'm going to go over it anyway because this is a basic tips session, is that if you double click on a control key, it will take you straight to whatever you had hotkeyed. So like my Reapers right now are on 2, so if I double click 2 it takes me straight to them. Double click 3 it takes me to my Ghosts, 1 it takes me to my main army. You click it the first time, it selects them, but it doesn't take you to them. You double click and it goes to them. So if you're very new to the game and you're not used to using these control keys, one thing that I would suggest is to go into a custom game where you don't have any pressure and just work on this exercise and some of the other exercises that I'm going to go over in a little bit. So just practice quickly double clicking on your other control keys so that you can move around and get used to what you generally have selected to which key. Double click, double click, double click. Just practice that until you're comfortable with it. My actual production buildings I hotkey to 5 and 6. I put barracks of all types to 5, and factories and starports I set to 6. So you can do whatever you want, but that works for me. I set 7 to specialty buildings like the Ghost building. Just I don't usually use that, and then I set 8 to upgrade buildings like Engineering Bay and Armory, so that I can find them if for some reason if it's somewhere in my base that I don't usually put it. So one other thing that I think sometimes screws up newer players is, especially if they're Terran and they have their base walled off, is the rallying of their little barracks that's part of their wall. So there are little details that determine which side of the barracks a unit will pop out of once you build it, but the easiest thing to tell you to do so that there's never ever any problem is just select the barracks, right click directly into your base, nowhere near your supply depots, and then hold shift and right click again wherever you want it to actually rally to. So instead of going like this, in which case occasionally the stupid unit, depending upon the setup, the unit will go outside of the supply depot over here on this side, make it very clear that you want the unit to go into your base, shift, and then rally it to wherever you want. Now I'm going to go over macro. I'm listening. One common misconception, or area that people are confused about, is the difference between regular mines, regular expansions, and your high yield expos. So the difference is that the regular expansions have 8 mineral nodes, and the high yields have 6. The regular mineral nodes, a worker will return 5 minerals per trip, and the high yield they'll return 7 per trip. Gas between the two is exactly the same. This Vespene Geyser is exactly the same as this Vespene Geyser. There is no difference. Mules, when you drop a mule, it's exactly the same. It's 30 minerals per trip, whether it's on high yield or normal. So the only difference is the 5 minerals versus the 7 minerals for the trip of a normal worker. What does this actually mean? Well, for one thing, if you have a fully saturated mine, and by fully saturated I mean 3 workers per mineral node, then there's going to be basically no difference between the two expansions. 8 mineral nodes times 5 minerals per worker's return trip is 40. High yield would be 6 times 7, which is 42. 42 is only 5% more than 40, so it's really not a difference if you have fully saturated mine. But where the difference comes in between normal expos and high yield expos is that the high yields require a lot fewer workers to actually get the same amount of minerals out of. So that's the advantage. You don't usually have a fully saturated mine, because if you have 3 workers per mineral node, you probably already are building an expansion and you're about to move your workers over there. So that covers high yield versus regular mines. Another thing that I think would be useful to go over, specifically for Terran players, is how to micro siege tanks. This is a problem that new Terran players struggle with all the time. They're unwieldy and they take up a lot of... they're not so much unwieldy as they take up a whole lot of your time to micro. If you're sitting there going, okay, I want to siege them here, and then I want to de-siege them, and I want to move them up to here, and then I want to siege them again. That takes a lot of time, and you're missing out on doing other actions while that's going on. Most people probably already know, but I'm going to cover it anyway. In Starcraft 2, you can shift click your actions. So if I take this little marine and I want him to run in a square shape around my siege tanks without having to babysit him the whole time, I'll right click, hold shift, right click, hold shift, right click, hold shift. The entire time I'm just holding shift while I'm giving him more actions, and he'll go do those things. So I can just tell him to go run around, and then I can go worry about something else. You can do the same for buildings with workers. You can tell him to build something and then go back to minerals when he's done, and then you don't have to watch the damn SCV. So how does this relate to siege tanks? Well, shift click actions are extremely important with siege tanks, probably more so than just about any other unit, because you don't want to sit there and have to wait for the de-siege and move and then re-siege again every time that you want to leapfrog your siege tanks forward at all. So what you're going to do is hit D, right click, hold shift, hit E. That will tell them to do all those actions without you having to interact with them anymore.